Hey Retool community, this is Jamie Dawson Codes, and in this video I'm going to show you a custom way to add pagination to a list view inside of Retool. So this is going to be a follow along video where we're going to build this entire app from scratch. The way the app works is that you click the load data button. It will initially load an array of 100 objects where every single object only has one name associated with each individual object. And then from here in the list view, we're going to break it down into 10 chunks of 10. So 10 names for the entire list of 100 different names that are associated in the array. And then you'll be able to click the next button, so you'll be able to go through 10 names at a time, all the way up to the 10th page. Can't go past the 10th page even if you click this button. And you can click the previous page button, so you can go all the way back to the first page to start at the beginning. If this is functionality that you think you would need for your list view, stick around because we're going to build this entire app from scratch. Okay, so I'm assuming you have like a completely blank project up and running. Let's go ahead and get our components on the page so we can start building them out. The first thing I want to do is I want to add 3 different buttons that will need to interact with the data. So this is going to be the load data button. This button will be the previous page button. And this will be the next page button. So we got that. The next thing we're going to need is the list view. So let's just go ahead and get that on the board. Kind of organize it so it looks a little better. There we go. And now we're going to need the text. So let's just grab a text item, put it here in between the pages. I'm just going to make the text number for now, but we'll change that later. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to make sure that I actually have the ability to load the data that I want to start interacting with. So let's make the variable in the query that we're going to be using to be able to actually do that. So the first thing you'll need to do is you'll need to create a variable, and we'll just call it all data since it'll contain all 100 numbers. And then next, you're going to need to create a query. I want to call this query loadDataQuery. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm actually going to be copying and pasting the array of objects of 100 different names that will exist inside this array. Don't worry, I'm actually going to be providing this bit of code like inside of the link inside this video. So you should be able to find it if you look in the description. All this is just this function is just saying, hey, take the all data variable and set the value to the array of 100 names. So I'll go ahead and save that. Next thing I want to do is I want to attach that functionality to this button. So just go to here. When you click on the button, click on Event Handler. So that should do the load data query. And if I run it, you can check the actual data itself. And you'll see that like all data now has 100 items stored inside of it. So now that we have all the data, let's start filtering it out. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a variable called filtered data. And this is the variable that's going to hold all of the filtered data. Next, we will make a variable called low. And I want low to be set to 0. And I need one word variable, and we're going to call that variable high. And I want to set that value to 10. And you're going to see here in a second when we make out the functionality why we're setting low to 0 and 10 to high. So the next thing you'll need to do for this functionality is create a query, and I want to call this query setFilteredData. Okay, so what this functionality is going to do is that it's going to take the filtered data and it's going to basically slice the data inside of all data from the low value to high value to basically create a shallow copy of that data and apply it to the first page inside of the list view. So to do that, you need to do filtered data. You need to call on setValue to set the value of filtered data. Now we need to grab the entire item inside of all data. So do alldata.value. Now we're going to use the JavaScript functionality called slice. So slice will take in 2 values, low and high. low represents 0 and high represents 10. And what it does is that it creates a shallow copy of the all datas array. And so you would think that it would include everything from the 0th index to the 10th index, but the number 10 actually represents where you would stop. So it would actually create a copy from the 0 index to the 9th index. And once it does that, that new array will be applied to the filtered data array. So once we've done that, just go ahead and hit save. Now I want the filtered data functionality be connected to the load button event handler. So just go back to the button, click the event handler button that adds to it, and you'll see it automatically sets to set filtered data. So now I want to go ahead and click on ListView 1. I no longer want it associated with the demo data that initially gets applied to it when you add a list view, so I want it set to filtered data. So if I click on this button to load the data, you'll see that like it just says object right here instead of the actual names associated inside of filtered data. That's because we haven't updated this area, so just click on this container tile.1 and then do item.name. And that will update it so you can see the names inside of filtered data. So now that the basics of filtering and the very first page we see is built out, let's go ahead and build out the functionality for the next page button. To do that, create a query and just call it next page. So we need to think about our logic for making sure that we're not going past the data that is actually provided in all data. So what I like to do is I'll just go ahead and check high.value is less than all data.value.length. So whatever the data that is being passed in here, whether it's 100 or 1,000, this will prevent us from going past whatever it is that we need to make sure that we're not going past. So while we're here, let's just go ahead and update our low and high values. So low.setValue, we'll do low.value plus 10. And let's go ahead and also increment in 10 as well for the high value. Now we're going to go ahead and try and update our filtered data. So once again, filtered data.setValue, and then we'll go through all data.value.slice. And now here you might be thinking we'd be able to pass low.value and high.value into it, but that actually will not work. We'll actually need to go ahead and create like two new variables that are separate from the stored data that's in here. So we'll just do const new low and equal it to low.value plus 10. And we'll do const new high equal to high.value plus 10. And so just make it new low, and then the next argument will be new high. Else, we'll just do a console log and just say no more pages. Hit save. Now let's take this button and let's attach it to the event handler. So event handler is now connected to next page. And just like that, I'm able to increase the pages. So now the next page functionality is done, let's go ahead and actually create the functionality for a previous page. To make this super simple, we're just going to go ahead and copy all this data and manipulate it because the idea is basically the same, just in reverse. So up here, we're going to add a query. We'll call it previous page and just go ahead and paste it in. So here, instead of checking if high.value is less than all data, we just have to check if low.value is greater than 0. And then take all of these plus signs and turn them into minus signs. And just to make sure we're doing the right thing, let's change the console log to can't go below 0. So now the functionality is done. Click the button, go to the event handler and click the plus sign, and now the previous page functionality is added to this. So now we can go all the way back here, and if I did everything correctly, you'll see we get our console log that says can't go below 0. So the last thing we need to add is super simple. We just need to be able to keep track of the page number we're looking at. So all we have to do is create a variable and increase it or decrease it depending on which button is clicked. So to do that, create a variable. We're going to call it page number. And I want page number set to 1. So go to the text, page number dot value. So that's set to 1. And let's make it a little bigger. And I want to go ahead and center it, make it look nicer. So let's write out the functionality to increase the number. So we can just do that inside of our next page function. So we'll do page number dot set value, page number dot value plus 1. We'll save it, test it out. So that increases it. And lastly, we'll just decrease it inside the previous page functionality. So we'll do page number dot set value, page number dot value minus 1. Hit save. And we can test to make sure it doesn't go past 1 or 10. And that is the end of this video. If you stuck around to the end, I really appreciate you checking out my content, and I hope you found it helpful for your own app that you're building. If you're actually building a Retool app, put in the comment section below what you're building. I'd love to know what you're working on.